It is my honor to now introduce my fellow MC, Ray Dye, who will present an overview of the various approaches of building research capacity. Ray has 12 years of experience, over 12 years of experience as a church planter with OMF focused on people groups in Southeast Asia. Ray?
Thank you, Lee. I will share my screen. So, I would like to briefly discuss the current state of training for mission information workers today. Mission information workers require specialized training to conduct research and analysis effectively. However, the level of training varies widely among individuals and organizations. In other words, there's a spectrum when it comes to training. Many workers lack any formal training, while others have received some training from diverse sources. Then there are organizations like OC that offers formalized training. I think ideally all of us should be involved in the process of ongoing training. Like Lee mentioned just now, during our last conference, training was mentioned as one of the main felt needs from the information workers. However, when we interviewed several organizations, many of them had no formalized training program in this area. This lack of training can be in part attributed to perhaps an identity issue. Some organizations see themselves as specializing in certain aspects of missions, like evangelism and church planting. In other words, they view their role as consumers of research rather than as researchers themselves. This might also mean that in that organization, there is no centralized research function or dedicated personnel. Besides identity, there can also be different focus and emphasis in research that might impact the type of training they feel they need. One person said that we need to clarify what we are researching, how we are researching, and the philosophy and ethos of how we're counting. Another person said, UPG is not the main way with how we look at things. People groups, which is just a beginning for us. The reality on the ground is more complex. So in other words, what it takes for people to understand the gospel, believe it, and stay a follower is not something they believe can be measured with just numbers. So that's why they feel there are gaps in how traditional training is done. And some of us have received training from a variety of sources. The most important one is academic programs. Graduate level programs in missiology or intercultural studies can include training in research methods. These programs typically include biblical studies, theology, anthropology, missiology, history, and research methods. So this is traditionally where many of the mission information workers receive their training. Field experience is also very relevant. One person that we interviewed said that he designed an ethnographic research about how people came to be Christians and what helps them to persevere in their faith. This person then partnered with different field teams in Southeast Asia and did this research among different people groups. In this way, field experience offers hands-on training and allows mission information workers to develop their research skills in the field. Conference and workshops like this meeting can provide valuable learning opportunities as well. EMDC is another organization that offers free online training. They have some of the past topics, including surveys, polls, and quizzes, how to use them successfully, and assessing a language context on multilingualism, and 5 ways to improve your data analysis using MS software tools. So this is an area that has a lot of potential for further development. I will put a link in the chat after my my session here. There's also a formal training. Oxford Center for Mission Studies offer a guided research program. It's a flexible research-based program providing a great opportunity for you to reflect, explore, investigate, and produce a significant and meaningful research output at your own speed and with the help of a personal tutor. It is a paid program, so there's a cost involved. If you're interested, you can just simply search online for the name of this. We also heard back from IMB, International Mission Board. They have a very robust training program. They recruit researchers from each of their regions, and they provide a mentoring and training for 1 year. During this year, they would meet once a month, and they would learn from an experienced researcher on many different topics, including qualitative research methods, and visualization using software, people group research methods, anthropology basics, church planting, best practices, and other relevant topics. So then they will take what they learn and practice, depends on the needs of the field. Over time, they will become experts in their region for their people groups. So finally, after my presentation, you will hear from One Challenge. They will talk about their formal training program as well. I think as we think about training, is definitely a huge topic. It's an area that needs much development. If you know any resources or have any questions or feedback, please let us know in the chat. I would love to see some conversations started about how different organizations can better partner together. Perhaps we can develop a free online training program for mission research. It can also be a place where people can sign up to be mentors and mentees. Above all, let's recognize we need to adopt a lifelong learning orientation and humbly keep learning and sharing in this space. We should not only do research, but also reflect. Be mindful about what we are doing, not trying to prove something, but trying to learn something. And let us keep asking God for help and wisdom in this area so we might glorify Him. Thank you. So now I have the pleasure of introducing Russ Mitchell and Dan Eyestone of OC to tell us more about how their approach and resources to train researchers. So Dan taught choral music and theater stagecraft for grades 6 through 12 at Faith Academy in Manila, Philippines for 25 years before returning to the US in 2014 and joining OC's research team. He has been learning research by participation along with teammates on several projects each year, as well as producing the annual ministry report for the OC Global Alliance. He and his wife, Kim, live in Spokane, Washington. They have 2 grown sons, one of whom is married and has 3 young children. And we also have Russ Mitchell. Oh, there you are. Sorry, on the bottom of my screen. Russ Mitchell enjoyed 15 years of fruitful ministry in Romania with One Challenge, where he used research to help develop the national church planting process and a cross-cultural mission movement. After he served with One Challenge Global Research Team, his primary focus was training Christian workers in research and ministry. His most recent research evaluating national church planting process was published as a chapter in Mobilizing Movements, published by William Carey Press in 2021. Presently, he's the director of training for One Challenge and teaches at Taylor University in Upland, Indiana. He and his wife, Kathy, have 4 adult children. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, well, thank you for that great introduction. Dan Eyestone and I are very happy to share with you some things that we have learned about building research skills. And we are both so indebted to our colleagues who have gone before us and passed along their wisdom. We have both been so blessed by working with such talented people who have enabled us to build our research skills.
Today's topic is building research skills, learning, and leading, both sides of the learning experience. Training is an important part of building research skill. And in this session, we want to help you first reflect on what has helped you build your own research skills, and then apply some key ideas to help develop both your own research skills and the research abilities of others. And identify one thing that you will do after this conference to help develop your research abilities or the abilities of others. I was scanning the faces a moment ago, and it looked like most of us that I could see were rather experienced ones. So our challenge today is, who are you offering a hand to help them up to the next step of their development?
As we begin, we want to get to know you better. And in a moment, we will invite you to participate in a poll. Since I have become the director of training with our organization, I have found it very helpful to give mission workers a skill development scale to help them identify their current skill level and where they would desire to be. Today, we will use a very simple skill development scale with just 3 categories: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Allow me to describe these 3 categories a little bit. Beginner mission information workers have a basic understanding of research and ministry and know why it's important. Likewise, a beginner knows some of the foundational skills needed to use research to develop and build ministry. Intermediate mission information workers are most likely working on, or perhaps have even finished, a research project. Having done a research project, intermediate mission information workers understand the basics, but are beginning to realize there is much more to learn. People in the intermediate skill range at times need assistance. On the other hand, people in the intermediate range can help beginners and also others who might be a step or 2 behind them. And I would add, they can help us more experienced information workers with some of the new technology, no? Advanced mission information workers have done multiple research projects. They may have developed a particular specialization in mission information work, like mapping, church growth, disciple-making movements, ethnography, or survey analysis. And those with advanced skills are a great resource who can help others develop their research capacity. Keep in mind that it can take between 8,000 and 10,000 hours of on-the-job experience to master a craft. Or in other words, it could take 4 to 5 years of full-time work to become very skilled in this area. And I find this thought encouraging. Everyone who is an advanced mission worker today was at one time a beginner.
Well, I'm going to offer a very simple poll to just help us figure out who we are here in the room. So I'm going to just ask you one question and have you rate whether you are beginner, advanced, or intermediate. Here we go, relaunching the poll. I trust you can see that. Go ahead and take a moment and click on rating yourself. Excellent. Half of us have responded. Great. Just about at 80% of us. Go ahead and make a selection. In a few moments here, I will end the poll and share the results with us. Maybe we can hit 90% here in just the next few seconds. All right, we've got a good showing. And I'm going to end the poll and share the results. I trust you can see that for our beginners, we have about 20% of us in the room, 40% are intermediate, and 40% are advanced. What an interesting spread. Okay, so we all have parts that we can play in the training process as we go ahead. So for those of you who are advanced, perhaps as we introduce a bunch of these ideas, there are things that you will be able to share with others that you're helping. Okay, let's move ahead. I think I've taken that off of everyone's screens. Let me know if that didn't work.
All right. Thank you, Dan, for that poll. That's very insightful of who we have in the conference today. And before I introduce our first training tool, I'd like to ask Dan a few questions about how he developed his skills as a mission information worker. So Dan, what has motivated you to become involved in mission information work?
Well, I was one of those kids who used to count everything. We'd be on family trips through the countryside, and as we reached our destination, I would announce how many cows we had passed on the whole trip and things like that. When I was pursuing a degree in university in music, a cousin of mine took me out to lunch one day, and he was a petrochemical research engineer, and he asked me, don't you think you should go into research? That really surprised me, but I tucked that idea away. I thought, music, research? Okay. And then during my nearly 30 years as a music and theater teacher, I found that often I was being drawn to the really careful planning, setting schedules, and so forth, attention to detail things. Then after many years, when the Lord made it clear that it was time for me to leave teaching and return to the US with my wife to care for our aging parents, I asked OC about the research ministry. And after a week of training and discussions with OC's director of research, I was accepted to join the global research team. And that was in 2014.
So Dan, you would have been a beginner at that time. So think about today, at what level would your teammates say that you are as a researcher?
Oh, I suppose my teammates might call me advanced, but I would hesitate to call myself that because there are still so many areas of mission research that I have little or no experience in. It's been a real blessing to have several skilled teammates who've mentored me and encouraged me along the way for these last 8 years.
So how have you developed your capacity to work with mission information over these last 8 years?
As I mentioned, I had a week of sit-down formal classroom instruction, a classroom of 4 students with Larry Kraft. And so that was very good just to expose me to the whole area. And then as I joined the team, Larry just gave me projects. First one was a mapping project. He gave me a set of data from Japan and said, download a mapping program. So I found QGIS and did that. And with those data tables and the map of Japan, I produced a map of the country showing the ratio of population to churches for each prefecture of the country. Another project shortly after that was taking data sets from Joshua Project and other sources and produced a set of data with maps and country charts and so forth for 20 different regions of the world for the Global Church Planting Network, which was then shared at one of their global consultations so that each country could look and see where they were on several different scales of church saturation. After about a year on the team, I joined another one of our senior researchers in doing the annual report for the Global Alliance as was mentored. And so that involved using survey tools to gather metrics and written verbal summaries of the year's ministry for several dozen teams around the country, around the world. And then at the next year, I was given that responsibility. So a year of training and then a year of taking over. I've done that now for the past 7 years. And this annual project has primarily developed my skills as doing surveys, but also as an editor of written documents, as a data analyst, and a publisher of close to a 200-page document each year. So those are some other skills. For that, I learned to use online survey tools, such as Lime Survey, which allows a lot of flexibility in how you do that. Then in the years since that, I've had several projects that I've joined in that were they were interviews or focus groups. So it was free verbal response that we recorded, and I learned to transcribe verbal responses and then analyze those, looking to pull themes out of those discussions and then analyze that. So that's qualitative research. So all of that just by working alongside other researchers and having them coach me and mentor me.
So Dan, as I've listened to your story, I just get excited to hear how many different experiences you've had over the last 8 years. And I'm hearing that there are 3 different elements that were at work in your development as a mission information worker. At the beginning, you had a week of formal training. After that, you were given a number of appropriately challenging projects to work on. And you have been very blessed to have people with more advanced skills to come alongside and help you learn as you did these various projects. These 3 elements, I believe, are at work in the development of all mission information workers. And as I came into the role of director of training for One Challenge, I was surprised to discover some research done in the corporate world that points out that these 3 same elements contribute to the skill development of workers across the board. So this piece of research is called the 70-20-10 learning model. And let me explain how this was found. Back in the 1980s, there were researchers from the Center for Creative Leadership who interviewed 200 leaders to find out what contributed to their development. And this is what they found. At that time, 70% said that their learning occurred on the job. And in the interviews, the leaders pointed out that they had stretch opportunities or job assignments or challenging projects that motivated them to develop their abilities. Or another perspective, we could say this is learning by doing. Another 20% of the leaders' development came through what we call social learning, that is learning from others. It might be peers, they might be coaches, or they might be what we will call later mentors. And leaders attributed 10% of their development to formal training. This could be in classroom courses or through personal reading and ongoing seminars throughout their career. So we call this the 70-20-10 learning model. Follow-up research since the 1980s has upheld the validity of these 3 elements that help workers develop their skills, although the ratio seems to vary a little bit between different occupations. So let's consider how we see these 3 elements at work in Dan's story. Dan started his journey as a mission information worker with a week of training. That's the 10 piece, formal training. And then he was given projects to do. That's the 70 piece. He had appropriately challenging projects that helped him, motivated him to develop his skills. And finally, we see that he had people who came alongside and helped him along the way. That's the 20 piece, social learning, coaches, mentors, and peers. So in Dan's case, all 3 components work together to help Dan develop as a mission information worker. We would now like to give you folks an opportunity to reflect on what has helped you grow as a mission information worker. So Dan will explain how we will.
All right. Pull up a second poll here for you. And we invite you to think about your early growth as a mission information worker. For some of you, that's really recent. Some it'll be a few years back. Let me get the correct poll up. Okay. Regardless of what level of mission information worker you consider yourself, think about what helped your early growth. So we have one, I had written material that inspired and guided me. Second choice, research was a requirement for a formal study program. Third, I had a person who guided me. Fourth, I was motivated by a need or a problem that challenged me. Or if you think you approached it in another way, please drop a description in the chat box, and Russ will be watching that to see what other ideas we come up with. I'll give you a minute to do that. All right, we're at 60% responses. Looks like we're slowing down a bit here at about 2/3 of us have responded. And I got a response at least in chat. All right, enter your response. If you have not yet, I'll close this down in 5 seconds and see what our results are. Good, we've got 3/4 of you responding, and I will end the poll. And very few had written material that inspired or guided them. About 13% approached this through a formal study program where research was a requirement. 20% nearly had someone who guided them, and 50% were simply motivated by a problem that challenged them and they needed to do some research. As we do throughout life, we need to figure out where to go on vacation or what's the best food to buy in the market. You do a little bit of research. And then Russ, have you seen anything that's noteworthy there in the chat box?
I have, Dan. I have seen that formal training is maybe a 15% compared to our 10% in our model. Peer learning is right at 20%. And then the challenge piece, motivated by a real life problem, came up around 50%, which compares favorably to the 70 that we have there.
Okay. Great. I will stop sharing that. Thank you.
Well, in this next session, Dan and I want to share a few examples of how we equip our workers to use information to develop their ministries. Within One Challenge, we have a several-year process that equips people to gather and analyze data in order to develop effective ministry strategies. So I wish to highlight not only how our people are learning, but also how we lead the process. And at the end, I want to point out how we apply the 70-20-10 learning model. In our pre-field process, we have a time of formal instruction about research in ministry. There are really 3 essential pieces that we want every worker to firmly grasp. The first is that every ministry needs research. If people don't get that, they're not going to be motivated to do research that helps their ministry. We use Titus 3:14 to cast vision for where we want our people to be. Titus 3:14 says, our people must also learn to engage in good deeds so that they meet pressing needs so that they will not be unfruitful. So we encourage our workers when they are deployed on the field to find out what those pressing needs are in their new ministry context. We also want people to be able to discern how God is at work. We like our people to say that they are going to join God in what he is doing. But in order to do that, you have to understand how God is at work in your context. So we provide some insights from scripture to help our workers have a grid to see how God is at work. And we also focus on the biblical basis for research. This is now done primarily through our online learning center. And in a few moments, Dan will explain how we do that. So in addition to these three essential pieces, we acquaint our workers with resources that can help them develop their ability to gather information and develop effective ministry strategies. Then, as our people get involved in cross-cultural ministry, we provide them with appropriate stretch experiences on the field to help them learn about the culture, the country, and also the church. This would be the 70 part of the learning model that we're looking at. We provide come-along assistance, providing more experienced workers that help people as they are gathering information about their new context and applying it to ministry. And we also provide some just-in-time training. This is the 10 part of the learning model we have looked at. So we do this through the online learning center that OC has. We also provide our new workers with experiential learning guides that give them various questions to look into about the church or the culture that they are now in the midst of. And we also provide some in-person training. Before COVID, we had week-long gatherings of mission information workers within our organization for ongoing training. Currently, we're using virtual platforms like we have today to do this. And I also want to mention that we have seen great benefit in offering internships to new workers. For example, one of our 3-month interns is now leading the national research process for a country in Central Asia and is on this call today. So I hope you have caught how we applied the 70-20 learning model. We engage people in information gathering quests to learn about the culture, the country, and the church. We provide come alongside assistance, linking new workers with more experienced mission information workers, and provide just-in-time training to help people to take that next step in developing their ministry.
So at this point, some people may be wondering, well, just what specific skills a mission information worker might need. Let me start with some basics. In a March 18, 2023 Wall Street Journal article by Sean Captain entitled "The Technology Skills Every Employee Should Have Today" makes the point that in today's workplace, we need to know more than just the basics of word processing and working with spreadsheets. An information worker needs to first make sense of data, starting with spreadsheet programs such as Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, and knowing how to use at least some of their advanced features. Second, we need to create compelling presentations. Using word processing programs such as MS Word or Google Docs, and presentation applications such as PowerPoint or Google Slides, including knowing advanced features of these programs. It's now also important to master communication tools for organizing remote meetings, such as Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Slack. There are many others, including how to link other programs into these for file sharing, presenting PowerPoints, and so forth. And finally, we need to manage projects with project management software using programs such as Trello, ClickUp, Microsoft Planner, and others. How can we build these skills for these complex applications? Well, as you may know, a lot of companies provide tutorials or videos to go along with them, and you can find those online. For example, Microsoft's training support has excellent videos to learn how to use Excel. Google has a workspace learning center with training for all of their applications. But Microsoft is expensive, and Google requires good internet connection to use their web-based applications. So I'm thinking there's maybe a number of us for whom both of those are significant barriers. So I'd like to suggest a free productivity suite of applications which you can download and use offline. It's called OpenOffice. It's a free, downloadable, open source productivity suite that includes word processing, spreadsheets, presentations, drawing, database, and formula, which I'm not sure what that is. I've never touched it. But I have used OpenOffice in that early project I mentioned of putting together extensive data packets for the Global Church Planning Network. I used OpenOffice for all the charting and presentation that I did for that. It's a good set of applications, and it's free. A search of internet produced several articles presenting the best online training platforms. Some of us in the Western world may be connected to a networking professional network called LinkedIn, and it has training in its LinkedIn Learning side with 16,000 courses in 11 languages. It has a 1-month free trial, but then after that, it costs 40 euros a month. So if you're quick, you might get a couple of essential courses inside that 1 month of free training. I browsed around a little bit, and a search on that site for quantitative research returned a list of 11 courses, and they ranged from 40 minutes long to 4 hours long, though most of them were 1 or 2 hours long. And by their titles and brief descriptions, they seemed to focus mostly on market research, which makes sense as this is a business platform. But there are several other online training platforms as well. Udemy is self-paced, has very low tech requirements, and offers it and can be found through an app for your iOS or Android mobile device. But it is pay for use. They have different levels for different people, starting as low as $20 per course. Coursera is an online courses, has online courses from prestigious institutions, and the payments vary from free for some to monthly payments to a per course payment. Skillshare has courses taught by industry professionals, and I scoured that site and found maybe 30 usable data analysis courses out of 165 that came up for that query. You can take several courses for one price, and it is free for 7 days, and then it's $32 a month. And finally, edX and OpenEdX offer university-level education online. You can use your mobile device. It has an iOS and an Android app available. And an example of what I found there would be a course called Quantitative and Qualitative Research for Beginners, offered by the National University of Singapore. It's an 8-week course, and it's free to audit. $99 if you want to get a certificate upon completion of the course. So beyond such productivity and analysis skills, which the world of business values, mission information workers need an understanding of whether counting and questioning, research and analysis is really biblical. And we've talked about that some these past 2 days. And they need to know how research can be used to advance Christ's kingdom today. The OC Global Research Team has developed a description of skills that we'd like each of our team members to develop, and here are some of the starting ones. Mission information worker foundations include the concept that every ministry needs research, and then a good biblical basis for mission research. Some general research skills would simply be effective communication skills and a working knowledge of the research process and research report writing. And then there's these two sides of research: quantitative, which is counting things and working with numbers. You might gather data and be concerned with accurate entry and validation. And we might use Microsoft Forms, Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, or our team uses Lime Survey, which is, again, an open source free survey tool. You need to do some basic statistical analysis. Frequency, how many of these, how many of those? What percent? What are the averages? Quartiles and growth rates are some things that we look at with these metrics. And then graphing and charting to communicate clearly what we have found with our quantitative research. Qualitative research is talking to people and learning from what they say. So you need to design surveys and questionnaires, use online survey applications, and then extracting codes or themes from their text responses, doing some analysis on that, and again, presenting it all clearly. Let's take a moment. I've just thrown a lot of information at you. Let's take a moment and let you pause to reflect and respond to what you've just heard. Think about one skill that you may need to develop. We've put a list up there. I hope that you can see that. If you're on a mobile device, you might need to flip it to landscape view and zoom in a little bit. But just drop into the chat, what is one research skill you could choose to develop next? Take a moment and do that. Drop it into our chat window.
Russ and Dan, there's a lot of good discussion going on in the chat, triggered by your presentation. You probably don't have time to look at it now, but be sure to have a look at it later.
Oh, good. Thank you. Well, hopefully you've had a moment to reflect and pick a target for yourself of where to go next, what skill to build. Those were fairly general. Let me move now into some of the resources that OC can provide for you. We've developed an ocresearch.info website, and we also have an OC Learning Center. Let me give you first an overview of the ocresearch.info. I apologize that the print is very small here. I'm just giving you screenshots, and I will circle in green some of the points that I'm going to be bringing out. Along with numerous articles on this homepage, you'll see several tabs underneath that blue ball there, which offer various resources. And I'd like to lead you through some of those. It might be most helpful to start with the FAQs, or frequently asked questions, and click into a few of them which might be of interest. Why do research? We answer that with perhaps Proverbs 18:15 can help us clear this up. Quote, "The heart of the discerning acquires knowledge. The ears of the wise seek it out." As we seek to wisely discern God's will for our work and ministry, we recognize that we need to seek out knowledge. The process of seeking out knowledge is what we in OC call research. Research leads to good ministry strategies. It leads to greater effectiveness in our work and ministries. It motivates and challenges the church, and it leads to focused intercession. Another FAQ you might find interesting is, what skills does a researcher need? And this page lists both innate and learned and motivational skills. Might be worth giving some thoughtful attention to that page at some point. How about How can I help? This FAQ gives additional breadth to useful skills for research, as it states, which I've underlined there in green, persons with technical skills such as survey development, database management, website development, graphic design, data analysis, marketing research, or mapping can assist many researchers with specific projects. So there's a lot of FAQs there that you can explore if you go to this site. From the FAQs tab, let's move to look at the Research Wiki tab. Users may find that the FAQs have some overlapping content with the wiki topics, but the wiki is organized by keywords, as you'll see on the left column there, and it leads the user to more reference articles in the OC Research library. So you can browse through some of the wiki topics of interest to you, looking for what's useful. There is some overlap and duplication because these have been coded with keywords, so you may find some overlap. Let's go to the Resources tab. Under the Resources tab, in the drop-down for Training that I've circled there at the bottom, you'll find some training manuals that you might want to read or study sometime in the future. I would suggest of the 8 that are shown on the screen here, you might want to approach in this order. First, the position paper on OC Research by Paul Yagi. It's just 12 pages long, and it makes a purpose statement for church research and missions, a description of key elements of research, an overview of a research plan. And while it was written specifically for one challenge, the ideas will apply to many organizations and institutions. So that applies to most things you'll find in these 2 sites that we're sending you to, that they're all written focused on OC. Just put in the name of your organization and it ought to be helpful. Second, the OC International Research Manual presents in 41 pages many of the issues that a team has to deal with in order for research to be integrated into their ministry. It starts by presenting general and biblical understanding of research, and then it presents OC's approach to research of the church, which we call the harvest force, and its context, the harvest field, and how such research serves both the organization and the full church. Specific requirements and elements of good research are discussed, including some examples and some simple exercises. And then third, the National Research Mobilization Handbook presents in 50 pages how to form and establish a permanent national research function. I spoke about that on Monday, if you were here with us for that. So here's a handbook that might be of help to you in moving that direction. Well, after you've had enough time to wander around through ocresearch.info and its wealth of articles and information, you might want to register in OC's OC Learning Center, as you see here on the screen. Here's the home page with the address circled. After selecting courses there in the middle, you will see a menu. Let's go ahead to the next slide there. There's courses, and it takes you to a menu. And under there, you see research and core introduction to research, which you can enroll in. It should require 2 to 3 hours of time for you to complete. You might then want to enroll in the Finding Your Way in OC Research Level 1 course, which isn't shown on this slide. These 2 courses are partially overlapping, but Level 1 takes the student deeper and farther into research, understanding, and skills. When you're ready to launch a research project, then you might want to go back to the ocresearch.info website, to those training manuals, and find another researcher to help guide you along.
Well, that leads us to this section that we want to focus on the question, how to find a mentor. Here we want to explore how you can go about finding a person who can help you develop your skills. As we begin to think about this, I want to introduce an idea of level up mentoring and coaching. Think about, where should a person be that helps you be on the skill development scale? Let's say you're a beginner, and most beginners would say they want a very advanced person to help them grow. Sometimes that's a good idea, but it isn't always the best because of what we call the recency effect. A person who has an advanced worker may not be up in touch with the early steps of developing a skill or the latest resources or technology. So in this case, if you're a beginner, people who are in the intermediate range could possibly be better helpers that would aid your development. And there's many advantages to reaching out to people who are a level up from you. There are more of them, they're closer, and they are more available. So by understanding this idea of level up mentoring and coaching, you realize that there are many more people available who can help you develop your skills. So now we want to look at how you can find an appropriate person to help your development. And basically, to do this, you will use your social network. Let's start the process by thinking about who do you know that has a skill that you want to develop. Start with those people in your organization. Who in your organization has those skills? And if you don't see somebody within your organization, think of people outside of your organization. These could be friends, neighbors, relatives, or people in other professional networks that you might be a part of. And also keep in mind social media connections. With the internet, we can connect with people all around the world that can help us grow as mission information workers. If you don't find a person with the skill that you want to develop, you need to then think about who do you know who could connect you with somebody having experience with the skill you wish to develop. So think of somebody who could connect you with a person that has experience. Think of people like your supervisor that might be able to connect you. Your supervisor might not be an appropriate coach or mentor, but might know someone in his or her social network who could help you out. And lastly, a thought I want to leave you with, who could you help develop their skills? I see that many of us in this conference are more experienced and have skills that we need to pass along to the new generations of beginners and intermediate mission information workers. So Dan will now share with you one way to network with other mission information workers and build your skill set.
Well, we're sitting here this morning networking a little bit. We've got the internet. And so let's think about using networks, online networking, to find appropriate coaches and mentors. The global community of mission information workers. You see their vision page from their website here, and it's found, good, the address is there. The vision page here states some of their goals as a community which welcomes, helps, and encourages mission information workers, which equips God's people to handle information. It's multicultural. It works together. And their homepage says, information for Christian mission, data, research, knowledge, wisdom, all for Christian mission. If you are interested, this site is for you, and you don't have to be a trained expert. Some people in our community gather data and information. Some store it. Others visualize it. Many use it, and all are learners. So explore, dive in, contribute. CMIW has an online discussion group, KSKI. That stands for Knowledge Stewardship for Kingdom Impact. Knowledge Stewardship for Kingdom Impact. KSKI is a Google group, and you may request to join this discussion group most easily if you have a Google account, but the request page has alternative instructions if that would be a problem for you. So you scroll to the bottom of any page on the CMIW website and follow the link to join the online discussion group. This is in the green box on your screen. If you click on that line, you'll go to this page. Read the instructions carefully. this group forum is not open to the public. It is secure. So all requests to join are screened by its administrators. In the second paragraph where that green box is, you'll find a link. Click on that, follow the instructions for registering. Again, it'll be better if you're signed in through a Google account. And you should find a request to join option at the top right of the next page. Click on that, and you will receive a reply from the administrators soon. Once you are admitted and you're able to get into the KSKI site, you'll find a page like this that it looks sort of like an inbox for email. You'll see that KSKI has over 200 members, and they can read and respond to topics or questions started as conversations by other members, or begin a new conversation thread for their own interests if one doesn't already exist. This list is regularly managed by Nelson Jennings, who I think is on our call here today. I recently started a conversation there regarding how we might best connect those seeking help and those willing to help. You might see it there, the third one down. Now, this list on this page is not very long. Nelson does a great job of managing this, and as conversations slow down or come to a stop, he moves them into storage. But here at the top 10, he keeps an ongoing thread for questions and answers, and prayer requests, and introductions. As new members join, they're invited to just place a small introduction there so we can go look each other up and learn a little bit of our background. Among those top 10 threads is one about topics that have been moved to storage. And if you click that, it takes you to a page that again looks like an email inbox. I've clicked on several of those to expand them. And there you can find the topics that have been moved to storage. I scrolled all the way back to the beginning, and you can see there regular habits of successful knowledge stewards, or hey, there's a free webinar this week, or databases, how to manage them, and so forth. So if you find a conversation or a topic that you're interested in storage, just contact Nelson and he will help you get into that and find that information. So we hope that this is a way of being able to ask questions, join conversations, look for help as you are developing as an information worker.
As we conclude today's session, we want to challenge you to take one step forward. As the Chinese proverb states, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So give some thought to the first step you will take towards developing your mission information worker skills, or perhaps the skills of other people. So we want you to make a personal note of the one thing you will do. And here are 3 possibilities. What is one topic that you would like to investigate or research that would help your ministry? What is one skill that you would like to develop? And think about who would be a person who could help you build this skill. Or perhaps you will do some of the online training that Dan referred to help you develop your skill there. And also think about who might be one person that you could offer to help develop their research capacity. So as we wrap up today, take a moment and make a note of that first step that you will take to follow up from the time that we have had today. And that is pretty much what we wanted to share with you today. We have put up our email addresses here if you would like to contact either one of us. And we look forward to collaborating with you in the future. May God richly bless you as you strive to develop your research skills and those of others.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dan and Russ. It was amazing. I think you set a new bar for presentations at these conferences. This is very well done. Thank you so much. And Ray, thank you for the overview on how different organizations approach training. We have just a few minutes for any questions and comments that you might have. We've got a lot of questions and comments that were made in the chat. And this is maybe an opportunity for those of you to make those on the chat to bring them to our attention here in this time to discuss. As a reminder, with so many people in the conference, the best way to do this is just to use the raise your hand function of Zoom. Once I recognize you, please unmute yourself to pose your question or comment. Okay, so anybody have any questions or comments? Something that I noticed in one of the chat comments, and I don't remember who said it now, but it really struck me, and I think this is something that I've come across in speaking with a lot of other people in different organizations, is using data as a way to actually inform strategic decision making within your organization versus fundraising. And so I don't know if somebody might want to respond to that on how that's working and what the different motivations for research are within your organization, the extent to which they might include both of those.
Mm-hmm.
Well, while somebody else is thinking of their response to that, I mentioned doing the annual ministry report for OC, and I really feel like there's both functions in that report. I, as a researcher, want it to be strategic and to inform future decisions and planning, and yet I recognize at the same time that the backward look, the summaries, the measures we have of some of our ministry output or outcomes do inform our leadership, our board, and perhaps our donor base as well. So dual function, but I really try to face forward with where does this direct us to go in an annual report?
Okay, yes, Chris?
I've been monitoring the chat, Lee. I thought I'd bring two comments specifically into the open here. One was from Danny Weiss. If this whole group were to take on the burden of advocacy for the need to value and fund mission information work, I wonder if there could be some meaningful change in a relatively short amount of time. I don't know if you'd like to expand on that, Danny.
Sure. Yeah, I have long felt that there wasn't really a value, especially financially, to provide for the research and analysis that's required to do a lot of this work. I know most of us are not paid salaries that are equivalent with the workplace, the secular workplace, for what we would do otherwise. I know that in my case, I was not a trained data analyst. I got into the path kind of sideways, and I think for a lot of us that's true. We have people now that are graduating with degrees in data analysis and data science that are asking to get into this field, and nobody's able to pay them. So I'm just continually questioning how might there be opportunity for us who are in this space, fortunately by the grace of God, to create room for other people who are more trained than we are, more trained than I am. And so I see that all the time of people who have skills that I would be able to leverage and pass down expertise of, like, the context of missions data, where they now have the skills, the data skills to apply what they've learned to that. So that's my thought, is that if there was room for people to gain meaningful employment and to get salaries or even internships alongside us, we should do everything we can in our power to encourage that and facilitate that, and to create value for that with the higher ups at our organizations, I think it would just go so far, so fast. This industry could transform so rapidly if we had room to pay people to do what we do.
I tell you, I really appreciate that comment,